Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and let's make one Lone Star block, but let's make it a really big block at 36 inches. Using templates is going to speed this up, and we don't have to worry about any math and any measurements. We're just going to use the templates. And today, the fabric is from Timeless Treasures. It's a Christmas pattern, and it's called Natalie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Lone Stars out of this black and gold. The red is going to be the background with a nice big border. So it's going to be a big 36-inch Lone Star with an even bigger border. To make it quick and easy, I'm going to use a template set. Now this is a template that's designed to make the Lone Star. It's not a rotary cutter, they're templates, so you're going to be able to use this to trace around your fabric, then you're going to be able to cut it. It is a Nancy Zeman template made by Clover, and you can make 4 different size blocks, 12, 24, 32, and 36. We're going to make the nice big 36 one, but we're going to take each of these little arms of the star and have them 2 different colors. And having that template is going to make it really easy. It's a 3-part template, so you have your corner triangles plus this big piece for the center. The first diamond would be a 12-inch, the next is a 24, a 32, and the 36 is the outside measurements. I'm going to be using the 36, so I'm going to use those outside measurements. I do want to mark up this template a little bit just to give me some guidance when I do the 2 different colors. You can draw a line from corner to corner or use the tape just to mark it. If you're going to use any of the smaller ones, you're going to want to mark from that corner to corner. That's the only additional marking I'm going to need on this template. The other templates work the same way. Each one of them will have the markings for the size that you're going to make your Lone Star out of. You have your 12, 24, 32, and the outside is 36. So let's start with making the Lone Star pieces. When you make a Lone Star, you're going to have a lot of bias seams. So I would recommend starching your fabric twice before you cut it. We need to make 8 arms or 8 little sections. I'm going to be able to get all 8 out of 3 darks and 3 lights. Because I'm making the large one, I'm going to cut my strips at 5 inches. Place 1 dark and 1 light together and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down both sides. We have 3 long tubes. Press them so they're nice and flat. We're going to draw half of this shape. The points are going to go along the seam allowance. So this is the stitching line. The point is going to go right on the stitching line. And that gives us our seam allowance. So we need both points lining up to the stitching line. The line that you've put from point to point is going to help you line up your stitching to make sure that it's equal. You then are going to be able to trace along the outside. Now if you're using a smaller measurement, you're going to trace inside one of those lines. Pick this up and move it. If you find you don't have enough for the 2 diamonds, just make the smaller 32-inch diamond. I have the 2 on one side. I'm going to be able to get 1 more on the other side. Match up the points on the seam allowance on this side and trace. With those tracing lines done, you're going to be able to just cut them right along your drawn lines. When we open it up, we have that 2-sided diamond. Gently take this seam and press it open and flat. You now have 9 points, and you're only going to need 8. You will be able to check to see that your blocks are the right size just by laying that template right over top. If they're not, you can make the adjustments now. We can put those aside because we're going to work on the background pieces. The measurements on how big to cut the strips are right on the template. For the 36-inch, you need an 11 3/8. And for the smaller one, you're going to need an 8 1/4. Take your template and place it along the edge of the fabric and trace the first shape. You'll be able to flip it and do the next shape. Continue flipping, and you're just going to keep drawing all of those lines and then cut them out on the lines. I'm going to do the same thing with the larger triangles. I now have 8 of each of my templates, and this is going to make the entire center, that 36-inch Lone Star block. Take your arms and divide them in 2 piles. So you're going to have 4 and 4. On one side, you're going to sew 4 of the small triangles. You will know that the edges are the right edge because it's the same size. You can't put it on the other way. This edge will end up being straight. Just flip that over and stitch from corner right off to this corner. The top point is going to match, but you're going to have a little 1/4 inch hangover right on that corner. And your stitching line is going to come right through the center of that crevice. The thread comes right off that end. When the corners have been sewn on, take one group and press those seam allowances going in one direction. The other are going in the opposite direction, and that's going to give them a snuggling opportunity when we do sew them together. With the pieces still in their groups, we're going to add on the large triangles. So we'll divide it into 4 and 4. This one long edge needs to remain straight. So that edge will be stitched up against that edge. If you go the wrong way, you're going to be able to see that it's not right. And even if you have one straight edge, you'll see this is not going to match up. So there's going to only be one way this can be put on. And they're going to be both put on so that they're facing. When you flip that over, the tops are going to match, but you're going to have that 1/4 inch again in that corner on both those sides. When the big triangles are on, you're going to be able to press them the same as the ones that they're attached to. For example, if this seam is going out, this seam is going to be pressed out. This is coming in, this one is going to come in. And as you're pressing, you can cut off all that extra fabric and dog ears sticking out. I'm going to block every single one of these blocks, which means I'm going to make sure that they're all the same size, and that if there's any stretching, we're going to be able to put it back into shape. I'm going to be using a pressing mat with some grids, and I'm going to re-starch it. And just let that spray starch soak a little bit into the fibers. Take your one long edge and match it onto one of the lines on your mat. The second one also will need to be straight. If it's not straight, you can just move it with your hands until it gets to that position. The starch is going to make it a little bit more flexible for you to work with. So you're going to be able to take and move some seams in if you need to, or move some seams out. You don't want to stretch it, you just want to shape it. So I have a straight edge and a straight edge. If I have some areas that have a little bit of a wrinkle in them, I'm just going to take them and pat them down with my hand, even before I get the iron on it. Between the dampness of that starch and pushing with your hands, you're going to put the fibers back to where they belong. Once I've patted it down and have it nice and flat, I know my 2 edges are straight. I know this is also going to be straight. Now I'm going to press it, which means I'm going to take that iron and I'm going to push it down, lift it up, push it down and lift it up. I do not want to do any movement because then I'm going to stretch it even more. That starch is going to have it stay in the position you want, and they're all going to be perfect. And do this to all of your blocks. Before I move this, I'm going to let that fabric cool down. The heat of the iron and all of those bias seams will just give it another opportunity to stretch because the heat makes the fabric very pliable. Just let it cool down a little bit before you remove it. Now all of the blocks are blocked and they're all exactly the same size. We are now going to be able to sew those 2 sections together. The one seam is going in one direction, the other is going in the other direction, so they're going to nestle together. So match them up and stitch the 1/4 inch. When the 2 units are put together, take the seams and press them open and flat. Now you're going to be able to sew 2 units together, press the seams open and flat, and then sew the one remaining and press that open and flat. The 36-inch Lone Star is now done. I'm going to cut the borders out of this fabric, Now this has been printed so it's running down the length of the fabric so I can get any length that I want. And it has 4 repeats. This is 1 repeat and it continues so there's 4 of them. So it's a big border, almost 11 inches. So I'm going to cut the length that I want and put it all the way around the Lone Star. That big 36-inch Lone Star block could have been left on its own and it would have made a great table topper. But having that big 11-inch border looks like we've added 3 borders, all the while it was only 1 piece of fabric. The Lone Star block can be made in so many different color variations. You can do every arm the same color or every arm a different color. You can even do it in scrappy fabric and then cut up every piece so it looks a little bit different. You could fussy cut it and it would have a beautiful shape to it. Using the templates takes all the guesswork and all the math out of it. And after all, we'd rather be sewing than doing math. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.